the Happy Scientist podcast. Each episode is designed to make you more focused, more productive, and more satisfied in the lab. You can find us online at bitesizebio.com/happy scientist. Your hosts are Kenneth Vogt, founder of the executive coaching firm Vera Claritas, and Dr. Nick Oswald, PhD, bioscientist, and founder of Bitesize Bio.
Hello, this is Kenneth Vogt, welcoming you to this Bitesize Bio webinar, which today is a live episode of the Happy Scientist podcast. If you want to become a happier, healthier, and more productive scientist, you're in the right place. Today, alas, I am all alone without Nick Oswald. Nick is out for today, but I will do my best to give you everything you need. In these sessions, we talk about principles that'll help you shape yourself to be a happier and more successful scientist in your scientific career. And along the way, we will sometimes hear from Nick, which not today, but in future episodes, you definitely will. If you have any questions along the way, put them into the questions box on the side of your screen, and then I'll do my best to address them. So today, I'll be covering the topic, getting dead practical about to-do lists. And the notion is to align your lists with your work style. So bear with me a little bit. I feel kind of like the Wizard of Oz behind the screen today, pulling a bunch of levers and turning a bunch of knobs. And that's even with the help of Connor, the producer on this episode today. So if I act a little flustered, don't worry about it. I'll get over it. So to-do lists. This we actually have broken into two parts. We're going to do a second webinar on this because there's so much to talk about. Today, we're going to talk about the real practical side of this, about how do you figure out what to use for a to-do list, what would work best for you, what will get you the results that you need, what will allow you to move forward and accomplish things on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, whatever time frame you want to look at. You want to make sure that you get the most out of this. So I'll begin with, you're probably doing something already, right? And it has to do with how your own mind works. For some of us, there's just chaos going on all the time in our heads. And I don't mean that in a negative way necessarily. Just we have a lot going on. We're holding all this in our heads. And some people actually are quite good at that. And they can hold a tremendous amount of detail at any given moment. For others, they find that very distracting. They really prefer to have an empty mind that's clear, so that when they decide to use it, they can put in there what they want and focus on it. So the first thing you want to look at is, what are you doing now? And is it working for you? Or is it failing? And it might be that it sort of works for you, or it's familiar enough that you get stuff done, but you feel like you could do better. And there would be nothing wrong with coming away from this webinar feeling satisfied that what you're doing works for you. And that's great. You don't have to change things just for the sake of change. On the other hand, there's constant new development, new opportunities, new things that we can do. And it's worth reassessing every once in a while. Now, if I go back in my own personal career, back in the day, I did everything on paper. And at the beginning, it was just a notepad. And I mean, I went through notepad after notepad after notepad. Oh my. And then one day I heard about this system called day timers. Again, it's a paper system in a nice leather bound little book with removable pages for each day. And, each page was laid out in a certain familiar way. And I was like, oh man, I started doing that and I just loved it. Oh my. It was so great. It fit my personal style really well. I carried that day timers with me everywhere I went. The only time I put it down is when I went to sleep at night. I took it everywhere and I used it. And and it really worked great for me for the time I was using it. And I believe they still exist. And if there's other things like it, I think Franklin Covey's got a system like that too. If you like the pen and paper method and it works for you, don't feel like you have to go computerized, that you have to do it on your phone or your laptop. You don't. You can use whatever system works for you. But I will caution you not to be a Luddite. Don't don't just get stuck with, well, this is the way I've always done it, because new things pop up, and sometimes you want to check it out and see, will this take me forward? Will this get me places I couldn't go before? Now, there's one thing that really hooked me about online systems at one point, and that was hyperlinks. The idea I could click on something and open it up. I can't do that with my daytimers. I couldn't do that with a notepad. If it needed to reference something else, I didn't know that I could find it. So if you need that kind of thing, there's lots and lots of systems out there that can provide that opportunity for you. But I want to roll back to what's on the screen here and why I chose these two pictures. I, especially as a younger man, definitely had a chaotic mind, and I knew I needed to have something to order that, and that spoke to me. Now later in life, I don't have a chaotic mind anymore. I really do like to have that clean slate to focus on things as as I'm working on them. And it's that has required me to change the methodologies that I use. And we'll talk about some of those things, and I'll talk about this historically, but understand you didn't have to go through this history and you get to benefit from those who did. So let's move on to the next step. There are a couple different philosophies out there on how to approach being productive. Some like 25 years ago, a seminal book was put out by David Allen that was called Getting Things Done. 288 pages. He's a good writer, but it's a lot of information. If you're somebody who's really detail oriented, you really care about having a T to cross and an I to dot, David Allen really will speak to you. I loved this book 25 years ago, and I would still recommend it today, but it's not for everybody. And it's if you are more of uh, a spatial thinker, if you're not all about the details, but you're about the bigger picture, getting things done is going to be a hard read for you. It's not. I'm not saying it's not worth looking into. It is, but you may look at it and go, "This is not practical for me." And I think that's been the case for a lot of folks. A lot of folks love it. A lot of hard driving individuals who who accomplish a great deal are using the methodologies that David Allen proposed in this book. And there are a lot of systems, online systems and tools and apps that have been developed based on this. And it's great. But the fact is, for some folks, it's just too much. And it isn't a matter of, oh, you're not smart enough to do it David's way. That's not going to be the factor. It isn't about you're not disciplined enough. It's about how you process the world. You see things in a certain way that don't match the way that somebody who thinks like David Allen sees things. Now, we've talked about this in the past, and I would suggest you go back to some of our initial podcast episodes that talk about core mindsets. David Allen is very blue, according to that structure, but you might be orange, you might be green, you might be red. there may be there may be other things that would make more sense for you. So I won't leave you hanging here. It's like, well, great. You just described me. I'm the person that would not get along with this David Allen philosophy. What am I supposed to do? Well, I have another suggestion for you, a different book. It's called Zen to Done, Zen to Done by Leo Babauta. And I'm sure that was a take on getting things done when he wrote it. Now, getting things done, 288 pages. Zen to Done, 91 pages. Very easy read. Um, and he, Leo Babauta, the author of Zen to Done, is a minimalist. I mean, he's a proponent of the minimalist philosophy. And of all the people I've seen out there that that promote that philosophy, I really like Leo's outlook on things. Zen to Done really takes the core of what's in getting things done. Instead, how would a minimalist do this? The advantage of the minimalist approach is you don't have to have every little thing figured out. You don't have to have everything planned at every given moment. And in many cases, that is the only way that will work. Now, you're building a space shuttle. Yeah, you probably need that super detailed plan. But if you are creating things on the fly, as it were, and I think a lot of science, especially biology, is like that. You're responding to new data that, whatever data you just got now, what do we do? You can't even know what you're going to do next until you've been through that path. So Zendaden really helps with that. Now there are some techniques out there in the world of how you'll approach things that can help too. So one thing that's been around for a long time is called the Pomodoro technique. The Pomodoro technique is quite simple. It's basically when you have decided what you're going to do next. I mean, right now, what is the next thing you're going to do? You set a timer for 20 minutes. You go and do it. And it's especially helpful when you have tasks that you're resisting doing. So like, look, I'm only committing 20 minutes to this. When the timer goes off, I can decide I'm gonna move on to something else. I have found that technique very powerful and especially to keep you doing things that are hard, that you're resisting for one reason or another. Because that when the timer goes off in 20 minutes and you're already engaged, you kind of don't want to stop. So it helps. Um, so you can use this to work your to-do list and not run away from the things you're afraid of. Our next webinar, we're going to talk about the emotional nature of of your to-do lists and all that. But so I don't want to get into too much of this right now. But the notion is you can use the getting things done method. You can use the Zen to done method, and the Pomodoro technique will work with either one. Another thing that's been popular, and this comes from the software development world. They used to be back in the day. Now, y'all may remember, I'm a software developer from way back, so this is why I reference this. We'd use this method called the waterfall method, and the waterfall method worked as a method for getting things done, but it didn't work real well. And software has this horrible reputation for never being done on time. It's almost impossible to plan for the future around that. And so a new method was developed called the agile method. Agile is just a project management approach. And this relates to do lists. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But the idea here is you can do things in shorter bursts of deep focus on particular things, whatever you're working on right now. Even though you got a lot of other important things that you're going to do, right now you can only do the thing you're doing. And you got to, this is part of the philosophy, how to pick what kind of to do system you're going to use. Do I have 10 things going on at all times and I got to have my fingers in every pie at all moments? Or can I put things in series? Can I focus on one thing at a time, that is? And as you do that, that can help you decide what's going to come next. So let's talk about picking a tool. So, what are the things that you're going to do? And this may have a lot to do with you personally. The scientist at the next bench over may choose a different method than you based on the answers to the questions that we're about to discuss here. And that's perfectly fine. Your work style does matter. The way your mind works does matter. Now, are you somebody that needs to write everything down every day? Are you somebody that has to, you're for your own satisfaction to accomplish a lot of things? Do you need to check a lot of things off? Uh, Other people, that's not so much their drivers. They don't have to record everything, or they don't have to check the boxes. That's not the point. They rather just focus, and that's a different way of approaching things. And there's nothing wrong with that idea that I want to figure out what I'm going to do today and go do it, versus I just want to know what's the next thing to do, and now what's the next thing to do, and now what's the next thing to do. It's a different approach to life. So let's look at some of these questions. So the first thing about the to-do tool that you want to look at is, what does this thing need to accomplish? Do I need a place where I can record everything that I'm ultimately going to have to do so that I don't have to remember everything? Is it is it primarily a recording tool so I just know what has to happen? Do I need things to pop up at a certain time so that I'm not distracted by the sea of things I could be doing, and instead I know that this is the thing I should be doing right now? How much detail does this system have to have? Do you just need to have a one word, one phrase prompt, or do you need a paragraph for everything that you're doing? Do you need to have hyperlinks, as I mentioned earlier, to documents and protocols and any other supporting material that'll be necessary? If you're doing that on sticky notes, it may not work very well for you. It could work for you though in something as simple as a spreadsheet, because you can have a link there, right? Now, it may be that that is still not robust enough for you, and maybe you're not an Excel wizard. Now, maybe you are, and you really like it, and you can work it that way. God bless. Do what works for you. But there are many systems out there that are available, and I'm not going to list off a bunch of them because honestly, it keeps changing and keeps growing, and I don't know them all. There's just no way to know. Good old Google does, though, and you can find plenty of places where it lists potential systems you could use, potential apps you could use, and reviews them. Now, you got to read all that with a grain of salt. Some of them are biased, but some of them are, legitimately researched, and I mean, it's not that hard to tell when you're looking at something if they're not giving you any detail, if they're advertising the very things for sale that they're presenting. Okay, well, it may be biased, but even those, even if they have a certain bias, doesn't mean they're not giving you good information. So it's worth doing a little research and just looking for the things that are out there. And look, if having a way that you can record detail and it matters, that's something to look for in those systems as you're digging around. Now, for some of you, your to-do list may be a daily planner, but it may also be kind of an alarm clock. So, you got to look into what capabilities it have. Does it remind me to do things? It's not just that it made a record of things I need to do, but it reminds me to do them at a certain time. That that is a useful characteristic to have if that's what you need. Okay, does your to-do list need to be shareable with other people? I mean, if you're collaborating with others, if you have team members who work for you and you're assigning tasks to them from your to-do list, that might that might matter. It might then be that you have to have a way to get other people to use the system that you're using. So again, in examining any particular to-do system, you may want to look for that. If you're going to use an electronic kind of system, and most of us probably are, um, does it need to work on your computer? Does it need to work on your phone? Does it need to work on both? Do I, if I make a change on my phone, when I'm out and about, will it be changed on my computerized system? Or What I really want to warn you against is having multiple systems here, because what'll happen is you'll update one and you won't update the other. And one of the things that happens if you're going from having a pen and paper system to an electronic system is that you always got that notebook in your pocket, right? And you always scribble on that. If it doesn't make it out of your notebook into your other system, which one has priority? And especially if you're used to using a pen and paper system, never fully make use of that electronic system until you commit to it. So you gotta do that. So if you have something like that, and maybe it's not possible for you to make the update on your phone, maybe you have to write it down on a piece of paper. Now, I don't want you to use that as an excuse. I'm not saying when you prefer to do it that way, but you have to. You're not allowed to take a phone into this meeting or into this facility, for instance. Well, your only choice is to write paper notes, but then you have to have it right in your daily system. Like when I get back to my computer, when I get back to my phone, I update it right away, right now. You got to make it a priority. You got to commit to a system. Now, another thing to say about this is when you choose a system, you don't know for sure it's the best one. You don't know for sure it's the right one. It may not actually be a good system for you. You're going to have to test things out. You're going to have to try things, but give it a fair try. Give it a shot. I mean, don't go crazy on this in that, well, I'll have to commit to it for a year before I know. Like, no, try something out for a week. And after a week, if you're not willing to keep trying, find another system. If you're trying a system and it's not working for you, don't get lazy. Go, oh, I don't want to look for another one. It was too much of a hassle finding this one. Finding the right one will be so worth it. You wanna give it your best shot. Another thing about a system that might matter to you, does it need to be secure? Do you have proprietary information, or is there some legal requirement that your information be secure? Look for those features because not every system necessarily has that. Some The more and more security has become a big issue just from a software standpoint, but it isn't guaranteed. So just make sure that feature is there for you if that's one you need, and then make good use of it. It's using any security. If you're using, your firstborn's date of birth as your password, I promise you that at some point that's going to come back to bite you. You gotta take security seriously if you really want to be secure. So this is an interesting one. The idea, should this system be fixed or flexible? Does it make me put time oriented stuff in this section? Does it make me put things without a deadline in that section? Does it make me separate my work from my work tasks from my personal tasks? Does it force or enforce that kind of structure? And this really comes down to yourself. Are you somebody that needs that structure enforced? Well, then maybe it's not a bad idea. And I think one one good way to decide whether or not you need it is how much you're resisting it. If you don't want it because you just don't want to be told what to do, you don't want to be made to jump through that hoop, that's not a very good reason. If you have a very good reason why I don't need this kind of restriction, it doesn't matter to my employer whether or not I schedule a dentist appointment in the middle of the day. That's allowed in our contract. Fine, then it's fine. But in some cases, your boss could get real sticky about picking up your kid from school at 4:30 when the workday ends at 5. And that's in your calendar, and you know it's where perhaps it could be seen by somebody, including your boss. So you know, you gotta look at what do you need. Now, sometimes flexibility is a real boon, though. If you have to do things a certain way every single time, it doesn't always apply. So having a little flexibility built into a system can be useful. And again, you should be looking for this. When I'm this whole list here of how you're picking a tool, this is the stuff you really should figure out before you even go look. figure out the answers to these questions for you, and then you can go about looking for your system. So, does this system require mobility? That is, can it just work on your computer, or does it need to have an app? And is the app on your phone up to speed? Because I think we've all seen plenty of systems in the world like this, where the computerized system is great, and the phone, it's so so. I mean, even big companies have problems with this. There's stuff you can't do on your Netflix account on the phone app that you have to go to a computer for. They could make an argument that there's a very good reason for that. I'm sure somebody there would. I think they're wrong. But, you have to look at that when you're looking at to-do systems. Find the one that works for you and has what you need. The mobility is really important. If you travel around a lot, having having your phone right there where you can update things, put things in, capture things right now when you're in the field or wherever you are can be can be a game changer for a to-do system that will continue to work for you. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit too about to-do lists versus project management, because as you start looking for a to-do list that will work for you, you're going to start you're going to see at the beginning some things that are quite simple. There are some great simple systems out there. There's one built into Windows, there's one built into Apple iOS, you know, and they're pretty nice. They get a lot done. I use them, you know, but they don't have all the features that might be had. And the more and more features you add to these to-do list systems, the more and more they start looking like a project management system. And you've probably seen some of the big ones out there. There's Zoho and HubSpot, Basecamp and Asana, and many others. And I'm not here to advocate for or against any of these, and I've used many of them, uh, and quite happily. And I'm real a big fan of certain systems. You notice I'm not advocating for any system, because these are systems that work for me, doing what I do, doing it with the mentality that I have. But you're doing different things than I'm doing. You have your own mentality, and so I don't want to push you in a direction to something that may not work for you. Again, if we go back to that last slide of the things you should be looking for, they're the things you should be looking for. You are the one that will need to decide. Now, when it comes to these to-do lists versus project management systems, one of the things that might really matter to you is, do you need to capture dependencies between tasks? You may find that just the nature of the work that you do, that a simple to-do list is not going to cut it. You're going to have a project management system for reasons like this one. Another thing to look at is, do you need to manage or monitor the activity of multiple people? Are multiple people involved in projects that you must oversee? And are there to-dos on those lists that you're going to assign to other people? And so it's not just about assignment to the things you personally want to get done, but there are things you want to make sure get done, and you may not be the one doing them, and you have to have a way to do that. And the problem is you can have it on your to-do list is, tell Bob to do X, and you do that, but there's no follow-up built into that. You got to make sure, if you assign X to Bob, you got to check in with Bob at some point and make sure that Bob got X done. In fact, that Bob understood what X was. Bob had everything Bob needed to do X. Um, there may be other factors there, and again, that might drive you from a simple system to a more robust system. Do you need to merge tasks and calendars? So think about this. We all have to do items that it's just something I've got to get done. But then we have to do items that I have to get done at a certain time. The staff meeting is at 11 a.m. I have to be there at that time. I my my task list can't just assume that I could have it a staff meeting anytime I feel like. These that might be something that has to be coordinated. So you may need a system that will also coordinate between tasks and calendar items. And you don't want to get in the habit of putting things on your calendar that don't actually have a time or date deadline. Um, but you do want to keep track of those deadlines. So you got to find a system then that has the right answer to that. That will it make sure I do it at the right time, or will it make sure I get it done before the deadline? Those are two different problems. If you start stuffing your calendar with things at 9:30 a.m. I'm going to do this, and at 9:45 I'm going to do that, and at 10:15 I'm going to do that, you're going to wig yourself out. I don't care how detail oriented you are. um, there are some things that should not be calendared, even though they have hard deadlines. So um, you've got to keep track of that. There's another factor about tasks that when it comes to time that matters too. If I have to have something done by Friday, fine, I could do it any day up until Friday, unless it's going to take me 3 days to do the task. Well, then I can't wait till Friday to start it, or I won't get it done in time. So you've got to look at that and make sure you're using a system properly. If something really needs to be broke down into multiple tasks, you got to have a way of capturing that, and it's got to be part of your system. So at this point, I've given you a bit to think about, and probably the most important part of what we talked about was that last slide, and I'll go back to it now. Um, there we go. Is is the examination you do of yourself for what's the right tool for you. First, figure out what it is you're going to be looking for, and then go out in the world and look for it. And there's nothing wrong with asking for input from other people. If you know somebody who's very successful in their career and in their job, and they get a lot done, ask them what they do. Get advice from people you trust. I mean, I hope that you trust me. I hope you've heard enough good stuff from me and you'll listen to me. But then again, there are other people who are doing precisely what you do. They will be a mentor to you, or can be a mentor to you, and they've walked the road and they know what works and they know what didn't work for them. And especially if their personal style matches yours, that can be very helpful. I mean, you want to model people that are getting the results you want to get, but you need to remember too that you have to have a similar mindset to them to use their model. And not every model is a good model for everyone. You know, you might want to be a singer, but do you want to be a singer like a rock singer? You want to be like a country singer? You want to be like a pop singer? It matters who you listen to, right? uh, what what would be a good model for you to follow? So it's worth digging into that. So if you will go away now, figure out this list of what kind of tool you need for yourself, and then go out and do an examination in the world and find some possibilities, and find more than one. You don't have to implement more than one, but give yourself some options. Then get in there and start using it. Not saying you got to stick with it for the rest of your life, but give it an honest test. Get in there and try it out and see what happens, and learn some things. And if you need to shift to a second system, make the shift. And again, give it a chance. Really work it, really follow its protocols, and see what works best for you. So when all that is said and done, this will help you pick out a useful to-do list that'll work for you. But there's a second episode. Why would we need a second episode? Because I've seen this happen too much in the real world. You go out and you do the legwork, you get it figured out what you should be looking for. You look for it, you find it, you implement it, you start doing it, and stop. Or worse yet, crash and burn. But whoa, what happened? Is it the system? Did I not do my legwork properly? And you look back and like, well, the system does meet the protocol I was looking for. And you know what? I really did examine the protocol in advance. I did everything Ken said to do. Why isn't this working for me? Well, there can be a lot of reasons why. And it may get down more to emotional reasons, and it may get down to more practical implementation problems. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. So I will ask if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them into the question box, and we'll look into that, see what else we can answer for anybody. As I pause pregnantly. So, one of the things you may find is, what if you've really got an attachment to a past system, but you know it's not working for you, and you're hesitating to do the examination, because it may be painful to find out what's what's not working for you and why. And all I can say to you is just take one step at a time. Take that first step in, just start examining it. You, as scientists, examination is your thing. It's what you do. Yeah, it's the same kind of scientific approach. If you find something's not working for you, all right, then test out something new. Develop a new hypothesis, test your hypothesis, and see what happens. And you're going to get results, and you're going to figure out from those results what's next best. You may not come up with the perfect answer the first time out, but if you approach this in a scientific way and you're already familiar with that method, it'll work for you. If you have to deal with deeper emotional issues about that, we'll talk about that on our next episode. But so that is the idea. So I want to wrap up with, hang on here. Well, I want to wrap up with, first off, thanking everybody for being present for our webinar today. And of course, whether you're listening to it live or you're hearing it on demand, thank you, thank you. Now, if you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe to The Happy Scientist on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. Listen back to our earlier episodes, and especially the first 9. The first 9 are core principles that we reference over and over again. Today, we talked about core mindsets again. That's 3 of those first 9 episodes. They are packed with quality, useful information, useful wisdom. And of course, tell your colleagues so they can help spread the happy scientist. And so we can help spread the notion of happy scientists. Also be on the lookout for more live Happy Scientist episodes in the coming months. You can find them listed on events.bitesizebio.com and on the Happy Scientist Facebook page at facebook.com/the Happy Scientist Podcast. So until next time, good luck in your research and goodbye from us at Bitesize Bio.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of PhD scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.